All right, well, we've got a sizable group with us, and I know we've got a few more registered that will be joining here in a few moments. I'd like to welcome everyone to the second edition of Tennessee Turf Tuesday, our June edition. And for those of you who aren't familiar, this is a new digital learning series that the Tennessee Turfgrass program has put together for 2020, and we're really excited about this. The ability to kind of take what we're doing here from a turfgrass research and extension and education standpoint and showcase it online with a digital reach has really been kind of fun. This is a series that we're doing on the first Tuesday of every month from May through October at this time, and it's been a really fun initiative for the whole program. Today's topic is going to be sports turf. In sports turf management, we're lucky to have a great group here with us. John Sorokin, you want to say hi, John?
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon.
Kylie Dixon.
Hi. Glad to be here and talk to everybody about some sports turf stuff today.
Taylor Williams.
Hey, good morning.
They'll be our presenters. We've got some folks from our staff that are going to manage Q&A, and we'll get into that here in a minute. Tyler Carr.
You guys.
Devin Carroll.
Hey, good morning.
Greg Breeden.
Morning, everyone.
And then we've got a special guest with us today. This webinar is brought to you by our event sponsor, Carolina Green. Chad Price with Carolina Green is here with us. Good morning, Chad.
Good morning.
Before we kind of delve into our technical content here, one of the things that's always of interest is pesticide points and pesticide credits. When you registered for this webinar, there were questions at registration about what state you're from, what state you wanted credits for, and what your certification number is. All of that is populated into an event roster. And we here at the University of Tennessee will take care of submitting that roster to your appropriate state agency in a timely manner. So that should all be fairly straightforward and part of our registration process. Should note that pesticide credits are only available for live viewings. So if you're with us today, you will get your pesticide credits. These webinars are archived on YouTube, so if you are watching this on YouTube, there are no pesticide credits for archive viewings. We need you to watch this live to get those pesticide credits, and we need you to stay with us. The Zoom software lets us know how long you're with us, so please stay with us for the entirety of the session to ensure that you have your appropriate pesticide credits. We also have STMA continuing education credits that you can submit to STMA for participating in this webinar, as well as GCSAA continuing education credits. There'll be a code at the end that I will share with that. Lastly, if you have questions, we're going to encourage you to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you type a question in there, our staff here, Greg Breeden, Devin Carroll, Tyler Carr, and myself are going to monitor those questions and try to answer them via text, and then some of them we will segue to our presenters to answer aloud so the group can hear them. So please use the Q&A box for all of your Q&A needs. And again, I'd like to thank our event sponsor, Carolina Green. I know, Chad, you've got a few things you'd like to share with the group, so I'm going to let you share your screen and get started.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Just a couple of things real quick I wanted to share with you guys. Just a little bit about Carolina Green. We are a licensed general contractor that specializes in athletic field construction. Located outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. We deal with natural grass and synthetic turf, new construction, design build, renovations, resurfacing, that type of thing, anything associated with fields, ancillary equipment like lighting, ball stop netting, fencing, irrigation and drainage systems, sod and sprig. So project management for athletic field complexes. We also do synthetic field testing, GMAX testing, and synthetic field cleaning as part of our service. We're a specialty sod producer. We contract grow a lot of sand-based sod. 4 varieties we carry: 419, Tahoma, Latitude, 36, and Northbridge. A lot of this is grown with our Game on Grass, a proprietary product, sod grown on plastic, Bermuda on plastic, that we send to NFL and other clients that need sod ready for immediate play. Our relationship with University of Tennessee and their research farm and their Center for Athletic Field Testing and Research has been really important to the work that we do in trying to find the best grasses for athletic field surfaces, and just really try to learn from the things that they're doing out there and continue to do. So we're happy to be a part of helping them in any way possible when we're in the area. I'd also like to quickly show you a little video that we put together for Game on Grass. I'll just let it play, and hopefully you can hear the audio okay. You may need to turn it up just a hair to hear this.
Have you ever seen grass like this before? I mean, 2 days ago they laid this down, and today here we are playing on it. I mean, Carolina Green is amazing. What do you think? This field looks excellent. Woo! Grass, 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 grass!
Game on Grass, I think, has revolutionized sports field and natural grass management of stadium fields.
At this level of football, that people are expecting when they see a game on Sunday that looks like a brand new field, and that's what Game on Grass gives you.
The fact that they can come in and remove an existing field and have a new field in place in a matter of a couple of days is fantastic.
One of the main benefits of Game on Grass is it's ready to play as soon as it's laid.
It allows us to do any event, anytime.
It gives us the closest windows where we can hold the most events inside our venue.
The situation we've been in, we've laid it at night and turned around and practiced on it a couple hours later or the very next day. So things that we would not have been able to do without Game on Grass, we've been able to accomplish.
The quality of Game on Grass is phenomenal. It's the top of the line. It's the best that we can get. There's a reason why we go to Charlotte to get it.
There is no undulations in the thickness. There's no rocks being built into the sod itself. It's easily pushed with a sidekick, get it nice and tight.
The durability, the fact that you put an NFL athlete on that field within 24 hours after laying it, as soon as we can paint it, print it, they're able to play on it, that just speaks of the quality.
Carolina Greens folks try and keep it on their farm for as long as they can to try and get it as healthy as possible. Because down there in Carolina it's warmer and things like that, so the new grass stays growing, well into November and December.
I think that Chad said it's a 16-week process to get it to the point that they send it to us. It's everything that it's cracked up to be. You take it, you lay it, and you can play on it that day.
And it's really a tough grass. I mean, it's like a phone book, you can't tear it apart.
Well, Game on Grass and Carolina Green are amazing to work with. They're good people. They do everything they can to make sure that we're taken care of.
The guys at Carolina Green have been great working with us on the amount of ryegrass we want in it, the height of cut.
They're great with scheduling, flexibility.
They work around weather.
They're just a great organization to work with.
Game on Grass and Carolina Green have been a great asset to us. Carolina Green has built multiple fields for us, from baseball, practice fields, to all the work we've done out here the last 2 years. Really, none of what we have been doing would be possible without them.
So again, thank you for getting the opportunity to help with this, and look forward to information coming here. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Well, I guess it's my turn to go. And I'm gonna kick this off from our group perspective of talking about today's topic of sports turf management and integrated management practices for sports fields. And the presenters today are going to be myself, Dr. Kylie Dixon, and Taylor Williams. We're all very active with the Center for Athletic Field Safety at the University of Tennessee. And it's you know, there's a lot to talk about, and I don't want to be going too long, but everything we do is focused on a team effort. So one thing, and like, I'm glad that Chad, and thank you, Chad, for being a sponsor, because I've got a list of, you know, the team that we have up here. It's not just myself and Kylie and Taylor, but it's Dr. Brosnan, Samples, Horvath, and Steyer, who are all actively involved with our sports turf research program in some component. So, you know, one person does a lot, two people do 3 times the work. We're very fortunate to have a really large team of researchers, extension, and educators to help what we do. And as well as the graduate students, that we live and die by our graduate students. And, you know, Taylor Williams is finishing up his master's this summer. John Thomas, JT, is also finishing his master's this summer. And both of them were looking at different sports turf projects specific. You know, Taylor was looking at measuring critical fall height and different instruments for testing on natural grass and even synthetic turf. JT just accepted a job with the Cincinnati FC and will be starting in a couple of weeks up there in the MLS. And, you know, it tied into his master's work. You know, we try to do things that have an application for our students, so when they do graduate, we can get them jobs. JT was looking at the impact and playability of soccer balls on different surfaces, Kentucky bluegrass, Bermuda grass, and synthetic turf, how they perform, how they roll under different conditions. He also interned with the Tottenham Hotspurs as an undergrad, so, you know, he's gained a lot of valuable experience in the soccer area. Matt Lane is a full-time turf manager for UT, and he's also a part-time master's student. And Matt also worked for Tottenham back in the day when he was an undergrad. And he's looking at different Bermuda grasses and the management for the transition zone where we are in Tennessee, trying to look at, you know, can we get away from overseeding? Can we do different things? And so that's some pretty interesting work. Matt's about a year away from graduating. And then Brian Ogle is just finished. Brian's also a part-time student like Matt, or was a part-time student. He just graduated this spring. And Brian's the full-time turf manager for UT Athletics. He's responsible for Neyland Stadium, the football stadium, and the practice fields for UT. And one of the things we looked at, and I'm going to talk about his project today, was paint and the properties of paint and painting football fields. I feel it's appropriate to talk, especially during these interesting times with coronavirus and a lot of people's budgets being slashed and things like that. So some of the discoveries were things that we weren't anticipating going into this study. So we'll talk about that. And then a brand new student, well, sort of brand new student, Tyler, started in January, came from the University of Arkansas, where he did his undergrad and master's degree. And the primary focus of Tyler's work is going to be zoysia grasses, and zoysia grasses for sports fields, as well as golf course putting greens. So he's going to go from greens to lawn tennis to athletic fields. So there'll be a lot to come with him over the years, and that's actually going to be part of a later Tennessee Turf Tuesday presentation in a couple months. The University of Tennessee, we have the Center for Athletic Field Safety. We currently have probably a little over 25 active sports turf specific projects underway. A little more than 5 acres or 2.5 hectares of turf research areas. And we're actively researching both cool and warm season turf grasses as well as artificial turf. This is a Google shot of our research center located on the Tennessee River. And in addition to ag row crop research, everything you see inside the green circle is actually our turf grass research from Dr. Brosnan's Horvath and my research program, to inside the orange circle is all of our sports turf research program. So a little over 5 acres inside of that orange circle we have of sports turf specific research. The biggest cog in our research is probably the AstroTurf project. And you can see this is where we have a whole bunch, and Taylor's going to talk about some of the stuff we've done on synthetic and natural turf from AstroTurf, who's we've been working with since 2010. And they've helped us establish a baseline of what natural grass does and how do we get the best out of natural grass, so that they can go back and try to develop their product, their artificial carpets, to hopefully try to play and be as safe, especially, as natural grass. So, you know, 10 years going on to another 5 years continuing. Our focus is to actively research the performance and safety of natural and synthetic turf fields. And our goals are to ensure that those playing surfaces don't affect the outcome of the game or the participants on those fields. So as we go into different research projects, we want to make sure that there's a focus and a goal of an outcome that's going to have a real world application as it is for the sports turf manager as well as the athletes. So we come at it as a two-headed approach when we go into our programs. We've had a very global reach with our sports turf program, and we've been able to present all across the world. And by just looking at the participants list today, I think we're at least representing 4 continents. I don't know if anyone from Australia, New Zealand are on, or Africa right now, but we've got North America, South America, Europe, and Asia being represented today of people tuning in to this webinar. So that's really exciting. And our goal is to do it for all levels of fields in all areas of the world to make them all safer and better for the athletes that play on them. Again, focusing on playing surface and athlete performance. We're not doing turfgrass research, whether it's natural or artificial, unless we're beating or abusing the surface. So this is a video of our traffic simulator on synthetic turf, and you can see, the splash that you might see of the sand rubber infill coming up when you're applying traffic. We'll do it to artificial turf. We'll test the limits of natural grass. This is dormant Bermuda grass. We'll do actively growing, dormant. We'll test all sorts of different conditions of fields. So this traffic simulator does 53 cleat marks per square foot, or 56 cleat marks per square foot, which simulates the highest wear that you might see during a college or NFL football game on either 40-yard line between the hash marks. We're also doing soccer testing. And above ground, this picture on the bottom left, you can see is a hybrid system. The cisgrass on the left is the bluegrass, and on the right is Bermuda grass, and looking at how stitch systems go in. And then on the top left picture, you can see we have a jugs soccer launcher with high-speed camera and capture system, where JT, for his master's research, was looking at the angle ball rebound velocities and how it's impacted by different management practices of mowing height, watering the field, different species, natural and synthetic. We also simulate wear, soccer type wear, less impactful than the football trafficker, but you can see more of a shearing or a drum type shear effect that goes through. So again, we want to abuse not just perfect turf, but we want to look at the abused turf where it's worn, and we can test all parameters of all levels of fields. The first research project I'm going to talk to you guys about, though, is evaluating the effects of various painting strategies on athletic field performance and root zone characteristics. So, when Brian came and wanted to do a master's degree research, one of the things we looked at was, what was something that we could do that you could learn and take back to benefit UT athletics and other sports field managers when it comes to painting athletic fields. Realization that there's studies that need to be done. All the way back when Dr. Adam Tomes at Iowa State was here, when Chad's coming in and renovating Neyland Stadium and corrowing out, you can see the old lines of the field below, the painting, the markings, for whether it's the white lines or the power T in the center of the field. The residual, the stresses that those put on the turf, we wanted to research those and their impact. Looking at previous research, there's been stuff done at North Carolina State, Clemson, and Oklahoma State, and all of those studies have looked at the impact of turf paint and how they affect the light absorption or photosynthesis of the turf grass below the paint. And so one of the things we wanted to look at initially was how about the buildup and what effects does that have on the turf? But knowing that looking at turf buildup or the paint buildup on a turf grass system would be a long-term study, and for a master's student doing a 2-year project, it's really the realization of that wasn't something we could do. So we're going to carry that out independently as a long-term study to see how the clay-based or the titanium-based carriers of paint can add finer layers to a sand-based athletic field and do those that inhibit drainage, turf grass growth, and things long-term. But for the short term, for Brian's study, we wanted to look at different nozzle sizes. We found out doing a survey of sports field managers, they use all sorts of different nozzles for their sprayers, and they look at they use different pressure settings. So we wanted to see how using different nozzles and pressure settings impact the visual color or brightness of the paint that's being applied. We also wanted to quantify it. There's one thing looking at it and saying there's a difference or trying to visually look for a difference, but quantifying it using digital image analysis and brightness values, can we identify that at least on a quantitative level? And at the end, when we figured this out and we saw mass differences, we realized there's a big cost difference associated with this as well. If you look at some of the manufacturing recommendations, the paint companies give some recommendations on how you should apply paint, do different things. The paint equipment companies, Graco, for instance, sells 85 different nozzle tip sizes to be used that could potentially be used to deliver paint. Wider fans, narrow fans deliver different ways. Real common one is a really big 421 nozzle, big orifice open nozzle that would be a 4-inch line for stenciling. So we wanted to look at how these different nozzles and paints can go. So based off of surveys, it found that most sports turf managers use a nozzle with a smaller orifice at about a 319 or 319 nozzle, and they typically use it at 1,000 to 1,500 psi. So we set up a study looking at this nozzle with 3 different psis, and there are some sports field managers out there looking at the larger nozzle at 431, but at a lower psi. And so the bigger the nozzle, the more paint it's going to deliver. The higher the psi, the more the paint it's going to deliver at the same time. So, but if you do have a smaller nozzle with a higher psi, do you get a more uniform coverage? Do you get different things like that? So we wanted to look at the 2 nozzles, a bigger one and a smaller nozzle at 3 different pressures and how it affects the turf. We did this on Bermuda grass, Tifway Bermuda grass, and it was on a USGA sand spec root zone mowed at 7/8 of an inch or 22 millimeters. And the management or the maintenance, the fertility, cultivation, and management practices were done similar to what's being done currently since 2016 at Neyland Stadium, 2017 at Neyland Stadium. The paint was done on the same schedule as the 2015 and 2016 college football seasons for Neyland Stadium. So we did a total of 7 paintings in the falls and varied them throughout the calendar. So you can see year 1, 2015, the first game was September 4th. So we did a painting to set up for that. And then year 2, you can see it was August 30th was when the first game was. And there's different, sometimes there's a week, sometimes there's 2 weeks, sometimes there's 3 weeks between different painting events depending on the schedule each year. Different pressure nozzles were used, as I mentioned, from 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 psi respectively. And, practice putting the paint out and applying the paint was done, and you can use a simple, piece of particle board. And when you're applying the paint, the key is to get a little bit of overlap on your back pass. So here's a little video of just, applying paint, going back and forth. And it's typical, you have a little bit of an angle and you come back, and this is what we were kind of simulating with the treatments. So the treatments that we did were looking at paint, and we actually did, instead of stenciling the lines, we looked at doing checkerboards, the checkerboard. So when Brian for his study, this is him going out and putting a paint treatment down, similar to a paint treatment on a checkerboard. So our data collection include visual quality, digital image analysis using a light box that you see in the bottom left corner in a controlled environment. We did look at soil physical properties to see if we were increasing, the fine materials and impeding saturated hydraulic conductivity of the root zones. Being a 1-year study, we didn't see any effects on the soil physical properties, but again, looking at those earlier pictures, you could imagine over time, repeated time, you'd see a buildup over time. Then we did add a cost analysis as well to this project. So some of the results, it was interesting. Visual quality, regardless of the nozzle size or pressure, we visually didn't see a difference in the brightness of the white paint looking at the plots. So to the naked eye, we couldn't see a difference. And so what we did was we also measured the brightness values using digital image analysis, and that's where we did see an interaction that occurred. And the blue bars represent the smaller nozzles, and the orange bars are the larger orifice nozzles, the 431 nozzle. And then you can see the 500 PSI, the 1000, and the 1500 PSI. Now look at the ranges though. The brightness level ranged only from a little over 80 to a little less than 83. So that's not a very big difference. That's not a very big difference at all. But quantitatively, with the digital image analysis, we could pick up that almost 3% or 3 values of brightness values with using digital image analysis, but we can't detect that with the naked eye. So visually, for our perception of quality, there's no difference between any of these. But what we did find was we could quantify it using digital image analysis. But what was really interesting is also you can see how many milliliters of paint was used to achieve each of these per meter squared. So going with the smaller nozzle, 319 nozzle, with 500 PSI, we were only putting out 471 milliliters of paint per meter squared. The very large nozzle, in contrast, with the 1500 PSI, we were caking that paint on. Visually, we couldn't tell the difference because a lot of that paint was just going past that leaf surface and probably down to the soil surface below the canopy that you can't visually pick up, but being just a waste of application. But we're putting out almost 2 liters of paint per meter squared with that higher nozzle. Now, there's some people out there using that nozzle, and they typically use it at the 500 to maybe up to 1000 PSI. But even at the 500 PSI with that larger nozzle, you're putting out twice as much paint, while digitally you could get a little bit brighter paint, but to the human eye, you can't tell the difference. So that's some of the interesting things that we've found. Just for a note, UT, before this study, would use the 319 nozzle at the 1500 PSI. So they were putting it out over in this blue bar over here on the right. So they were putting out almost twice as much paint than they were to what they switched to today, since 2016, the 500 PSI and 319 nozzle. So some conclusions from this study is that digital image analysis, brightness increased with nozzle size and pressure, as you can go back up and see. Brightness increased as we increased PSI, and as we also increased the nozzle size. But to the human eye, we couldn't see those differences. So long-time effects was also something we want to look at. But how about a cost analysis and volume? So again, this is the volume of paint that was used per application, as I mentioned earlier. So as low as 471 milliliters, half a liter, all the way up to almost 2 liters of paint. If you do a cost analysis, so this is a cost analysis of what it would cost to do one paint application of just the lines for a NCAA football game. So not including the stencils or the logos, the stenciled numbers or the logos. This includes the numbers, but not the logos and like the checkerboard or the white for the checkerboard or the borders and things. So you can look at, it costs $223 of paint to put out that low pressure, smaller nozzle tip to get the same visual quality of what UT was doing. It almost doubled the cost when they were going at the 1500 PSI with that same nozzle. Now, some people are using the larger nozzle. You're going to be putting out more paint. It's going to be costing you more money because you're using more paint going through it, while visually you're not seeing a difference. In visual, you are actually using a lot more paint, and as much as $919 per application if you were at a 1500 PSI and a larger nozzle. So again, putting this to a cost, looking at 7 regular season games and 1 orange and white game played in the spring. So 7 games in the fall by UT, 1 orange and white game in the spring. They were spending $3,521 on paint just to paint the numbers and the lines. Now they were able to reduce that cost to $1,700. So nozzle size and nozzle pressure were, while not significant in soil properties, you know, in year 1 and year 2, those are things that we would want to look at long-term, but also it was not cost effective to use these paints for visual quality. Using a larger nozzle or higher pressure, it's not justified based off of this study. So using athletic paint will also, you know, if you want to look at it from an environmental impact, if it's a latex-based paint or a titanium dioxide-based paint, you know, you're getting less of that build up in your soil root zone as well, or your stand root zone. So the big key, though, is what we found from this study, and it's what's interesting when you go into a study thinking we're going to look at something for soil physical property changes, and we're not seeing that initially, but just the cost benefit of this study was great. Again, going back and looking, you apply that to not just Neyland Stadium on the right column, but the almost three practice fields that UT has. They have 2 full-size fields plus an 80-yard field, practice field at Haslam practice fields. You could look at, since 2016, what they used to apply in paint would be $153,000 almost worth of paint, because they're painting those fields almost 30 times a season. And then you add that with Neyland Stadium, painting 7 times plus 1 orange and white game in the spring, plus the logos, you're looking at almost $35,000 there to paint those 2. So comparing what they did from treatment regime 1 or 3, sorry, which is what Neyland Stadium used to be, to treatment 1, there's a big difference in cost savings of $75,000 and $17,000. More so, just to show, from 2016 to 2019 season, they saved over those 4 years almost $93,000 in paint to have the same visual quality. So to us, we thought that was a very interesting study, a very practical study that we learned a lot. How much paint was actually being used? They used 16,300, they estimated 16,342,000 gallons of paint was saved from being used over that 4-year period. So that's a lot of paint. I'd like to thank Doug at Pioneer Athletics for supporting some of this work and donating the paint, but this wasn't something that's not going to help Paint World Class or Pioneer, these different paint companies, from selling a lot more paint. But this is something that can help keep the turf healthier. If you go back and look at the earlier literature, on things that are being done for photosynthesis, having that digital quality, if that little bit more light can penetrate that leaf blade to help it photosynthesize better, you can also have a healthier paint underneath those lines in the logos. The next study that we did, that we've been doing, taking part in at UT, is recently this past fall, we started doing some pilot studies looking at the high pressure sodium and LED light systems that SGL Lighting Systems provides for grow light systems for stadiums. So we wanted to look at how these impact, and we've done a study on bluegrass, and it was repeated at Michigan State as well. And we've also done it on Bermuda grass, and we're getting ready in a couple of weeks to repeat the Bermuda grass study at UT. But knowing that this is a pilot study, we just want to look at, what are HPS, high pressure sodium lights, doing compared to no light at all versus plots in full sun versus LED lights. And if you look at this, this is a shade structure we built. It's basically a carport with 90% shade fabric that's going around the 3 sides of the building. This is the north side of the building where direct sunlight doesn't hit, but you can see I call these kind of phone booths. There's individual phone booths that are individually wrapped, double wrapped with a 90% white shade cloth. And inside you can see the different light treatments. On the left, the pink reddish one is the LED light. The middle one is the no light control. And the right is the yellowish light, is something you'd see typical of high pressure sodium lights. And then underneath you can kind of see there's modules of turf. So in each one of these we placed established ITM modules, 4 foot by 4 foot modules of turf, either Bermuda grass for the first or the second trial. The first trial was Kentucky bluegrass. So again, high pressure sodium light, looking at LED light, no light, under 95% shade, and then full sun, looking at Bermuda grass and Kentucky bluegrass. And after 12 weeks, some of the things that we saw was that the percent ground cover, again, taking that same digital image analysis and looking at a picture and counting the hue, saturation, and brightness and seeing what percent of that turf was green. After 12 weeks, the plots, you can see the high pressure sodium plots provided the greatest green turfgrass cover under shade. So these first 3 bars are under the 95% shade, but this is 95% shade with LED light, and then this is 95% shade with high pressure sodium light. Going into the study, I thought the LED light was going to be providing a slightly more percent green turfgrass cover based off of studies we had done in controlled growth chamber studies, but it was a different LED source, and the intensities were a little bit different, and the photo periods were a little bit different on ryegrass. But just going in, it was interesting to see that the high pressure sodium actually provided more percent green cover and maintained decent percent green turf cover for 12 weeks under heavy shade conditions. And you can see the no light control, declined in percent cover. No traffic was applied to these plots, so you could see there's a decline in cover or density that occurred because of the shade. We also measured rooting, and so while both the LED and the HPS lights did better than the no control for providing more cover, there wasn't enough photosynthate or light to stimulate enough root growth to do what that plant would do in full sun. So all plots equally were losing their light. So you can see, translate from over here, you got the percent green cover with the HPS light. That's good, but it's still not accumulating enough photosynthate to put growth into the roots compared to what it would do under full sun conditions. And it's always neat to see the pictures as well afterwards. So what we did was we would select stolons from these plots, and we would measure runners and internode lengths and distance from the first internode, second, third, fourth internodes. And what we found was LED light actually stimulated and created shorter internode lengths on some of the plots and actually looked more similar to full sun plots. The HPS light that had the higher percent green turf cover actually had taller, more elongated growth, which is something that we would expect. Just looking at that picture, you can see the red light versus the yellow light, but there was more blue light in the LED lights as well than what's in the high pressure sodium light. And yellow light from HPS can do some stimulation of what we call etiolation of the leaf, which is showing some of this, but providing more cover. You can see the no light cover, you can see how much, and if you ever manage Bermuda grass in shade, you can see how spindly it gets, how wide the internodes have gotten. So that's kind of the pictures that we've seen and some of the results of those studies that we have observed. So high pressure sodium lights provided the same amount of green cover as full sun plots for some of the conclusions after 12 weeks. Rooting reduction occurred regardless of light in the shaded treatments. And then, the shade increased internode lengths for both HPS, LED. It didn't matter compared to full sun plots. So they still, under those low light, they had a little bit longer internode lengths from those studies. So those are just a couple of highlights of some of the studies we've been doing recently at the University of Tennessee on some of our natural grass plots. I will turn the screen over to Taylor to take over. Go ahead, Taylor.
Okay, so just quickly, I'd like to go ahead and thank Chad Price and Carolina Green for their sponsorship for this webinar. Without Chad and Carolina Green, it would be almost impossible to do a lot of these studies I'm about to talk about. Here's just a list of some of the activities or projects we've done at the UT Center for Athletic Field Safety since 2010. 2010 is when we partnered with AstroTurf, and like Dr. Sorokin said, we're able to do a lot of natural grass research as a result of the partnership with AstroTurf, because at the end, the goal is for artificial turf to mimic natural grass and play like natural grass. So I'll just briefly go through some of these projects. Some of these projects are master's level projects. Some of these are PhD projects. We're able to do a lot of different field tests as far as using the Clegg versus the F355. We've done some extra grass studies, cisgrass, so just the hybrid systems. Those have been really interesting to me because before I started at UT, I'd never even heard of a hybrid system. So those are really, really interesting to get my hands on. We were able to do zoysia grass, Kentucky bluegrass, and Bermuda grass all side by side. So there's not many places in the world where you're able to do that. We've done a lot of shock pad research. That's been very interesting as well. But I'm just going to talk about a couple different projects as far as synthetic turf maintenance goes. So here's the layout of the UT Center for Athletic Field Safety. We've got 60 15 by 30 foot plots, or 60 15 by 30 foot plots, where we're able to do cool season research, warm season grasses, and artificial turf. We've got Kentucky bluegrass for the cool season, and then Bermuda grass for the warm season grasses. And then all the time, AstroTurf, they send new turf systems up to us. And so our job is to go out and test them, abuse them, using the traffic simulator, as you saw earlier in this webinar. And then we've also got for the native or the natural grasses, we've got native soil root zones, so a high clay-based content. We've got USGA sand-based root zones along with ASTM sand-based, and then followed by a sand cap root zone. So with this study I'm about to talk about, it's a maintenance study. So we divided the plots up into 3 different sections. So each plot was divided widthwise. So one section, you can see the spray painted dots there. One section received 0 games per week. The one section received 5 games per week, and then the other section received 10 games of traffic every week. So this picture, all these pictures were taken at the end of the study. So 120 games of traffic were applied, and you can see the differences in infill. The top left picture is cork and coconut fibers. The top right picture is Nike grind, so just ground up Nike shoes. The bottom left picture is just regular crumb rubber, and then the bottom right picture is Nike Nano. And so all 4 of these carpets are different as well. They have different pile heights, different lengths, and different densities. And what I want to point out here is that, of course, all carpets are not the same, or all turf systems are not the same. And on the bottom right, you can see there's virtually 0 splash. You can see all the infill material has stayed inside the turf surface. This is just a result of the high density fibers. And so with that, we took the Clegg hammer out, and so after every series of games, we collected Gmax values. You can see the orange lines. That's what happens when you come back after every 10 games of traffic and you maintain them. Then when I say maintain, all that is just running a push broom over the surface and leveling out all the infill material and standing up the fibers. That produces a really consistent result. You can look down from game 120 to game 20, and that's a pretty consistent Gmax value. And then when you don't maintain a field, you can see the blue bars how much higher the Gmax is, and then how much variability there is in terms of Gmax across all these surfaces. So to conclude, to better describe some of the figures, no maintenance. So when you left the system alone after all the traffic, it resulted in about 20 Gs harder. So that's a pretty big gap there. Maintenance decreased the variability of the surface. So the plots with maintenance, they only deviated about 3 Gs. Then the non-maintenance plots deviated around 8 Gmax. All systems require just a light brushing after every 5 to 10 games. If you do that, you're really going to prolong your artificial turf system. And then just what I want to end on here is with AstroTurf's research we do at University of Tennessee. Like I said, they want their grass to mimic natural grass. So with that, we're able to bring in different varieties of Bermuda grass. This figure on the right, the graph that shows latitude Bermuda grass, but this is the Northbridge Bermuda grass follows the same trend. So we're able to compare grasses against each other. And what we found with this study is that Latitude and Northbridge both lost green coverage at a slower rate when trafficked than Tifway. So with what we do at the University of Tennessee, we're able to tell other field managers, or they're able to read our research publications. So as a result of that, so there's been several different sports teams. These are just a list of the few that have changed their natural grass variety based on some of the research that we've done at Tennessee. So the Eagles, the Titans, the Redskins, the Chiefs, and the Ravens have all altered their playing surface based on what we've done at Tennessee. And with that, I'll send it over to Kylie.
Yeah, so one of the things that we'd like to do at UT is we like to kind of get some of the problems that may be in the real world that you might see, and what type of sports specific tests are you trying to do. So just talking to different sports managers and different things that could, what are the most things that could benefit that? Well, we want to help them by just helping determine what's the most important test for their field. Is that test happening to be ball roll if you're looking at a soccer field, a football field, a baseball field? What do you need to test? How do you need to test that? So one of the things we wanted to do outside of some of the research we do at the farm is help identify some of these tests could really help answer a lot of the questions the best. And then also kind of how that pertains to the sport and what you're going to do with that, not only on our research plots we have, Center for Athletic Field Safety, but going to actual fields that are in play, seeing what are some of the trends with some of the traffic, how is that impacting performance, how does the play on those surfaces perform. So that's one of the really things we are very passionate about, is trying to help make those fields the best as possible as we're going along. So one of those things, the question is, what do you use to test and where to test? The American Society of Testing Materials, it has a list of about 10 for different standards that you can, different ones for. This is a soccer field that's on the screen here. And you can see it identifies the highest wear areas that are generally a concern. So you want to look at those, but then additionally, there may be some other areas of higher concern, but that's just looking at 10 of the most high areas, kind of quick screenshots. What could you do? So if you don't know what to do, these are some great starting points and some great places to start testing those different things and all the different variables you might be looking at. But they have some for baseball and football. So baseball, you might be behind the shortstop and the second baseman in the outfield, behind the pitcher's mound, in front of the pitcher's mound, that type of stuff. For football, you might be in between the hashes. And so I was talking with a friend of ours at another university, Dr. Chase Straw, and he kind of got me into doing some heat mapping. And that's one of the things here that we really got into, and doing more than just those 10. So are there additional areas that might be a concern that need to be addressed? So when you're looking at this here, you can see this is a synthetic field. These are the same. This is the same field, and these are a heat map done with these are 150 spots, and then put into statistical analysis software. The thing I want to really show you over here is the infill depth. As you can see on the left side of it, there's a lot of red, and the red indicates a higher amount of infill. The white indicates a lower amount. And so for that infill depth, there's on the left side kind of a straight line going down. And I thought, well, these are kind of strange patterns. I don't really understand what's going on. So talking to the field manager, that sprinting line there happens to be where the track team comes and does sprints when it's raining outside, and that's where they're going to do some warm-ups. So that was that wear area. At the very top of the screen on that infill depth, you see there's some white kind of at the top and little area there. That's where the soccer team comes out and does a warm-up. They'll do all their stretches, they'll warm up, put their cleats on, and do stuff there. So that was kind of explaining that. And if you follow from the right side to the center of the bottom, there's kind of a trail down through there. And that happened to be where the not just athletes on the field, but students would be walking across to cut across the field to get to another building quicker. And so that just kind of wore those areas out. That moved some of the chrome rubber infill, and then therefore there was that kind of creates a problem. But one of these nice things about having the heat maps is that you can do precision management, because yes, you should add infill to those spots because they're very low. But traditionally, we just add infill to the whole surface. Well, if you did that, then you would fix your problems that were low, but then you'd make your other areas too high. So this is more of a precision management type tool that can help you really zero in on what area might need it the most. So you don't have to use as much chrome rubber, or you could just spot treat areas. One, to really help increase the longevity of your field, that you could help if there was a wear going on in a certain area, maybe you could mitigate that and try to move it around. This isn't just for synthetic fields. This is for natural grass. We did one field where we could look and we can see where they resodded down the middle, and you could pick up the volumetric water content between those. And so we're not saying you have to go out and get the nicest tools or anything like that to do these, but you can use some very basic tools that are very common that could really help. Like infill depth is one of the number ones for synthetic turf, to help you kind of keep that infill kind of what it was installed at. For natural grass, we're looking at volumetric water content. Do you have an area that's going to be very different? It might indicate that you have some type of mismatched soil. Maybe there's something going on there where you sodded down the middle. There's higher compaction going on. It just helps give a really good indication of, here's an area of concern and here's something we can do. Well, you also see in this screen there's some rotational traction and surface hardness, and there's a lot of differences there, but just some basic tools in this software, you can really help really just point out some areas. You can do more precision management. So if you're on a natural grass field, maybe it's a high weed area if you're getting to an area of higher surface hardness. And you may not notice it visually, but you could kind of go around, figure out an area of concern, address that area of concern, and make it a much safer, nicer field. This software that we did this was free online through got that kind of stuff. But you can do those in a variety of different softwares that are really easy to use, and there's some steps that you can use to really help to do these. But they're just, and this is 150 data points, what I'm looking at. So what I got with those 10 you saw before, it wouldn't have hit on a lot of these. I would have known, okay, well, some of the center of the field needs some crumb rubber and then the two ends, but I would have missed a lot of the inside or where that sprinting lane is. So those are some of the things that really help us kind of address some areas, do precision management. Maybe you need to spot spray some weeds or something like that. It'll really kind of help identify areas that may be of concern with those variables that you're collecting. So that's just a little bit of some of the stuff we do with the different testing. Again, at the Center for Athletic Field Safety, we're doing a lot of stuff, and we're very excited to keep sharing that with you. And as we go forward and continue to do new things, we're going to keep trying to share the stuff with you and trying to push it forward. And a lot of the ideas we get are from you. And so we really appreciate your time. And I think we're going to switch back over to Dr. Brosnan so we can have some answer some questions for you guys if you have any.
Well, thank you, Kylie. Great presentations, everyone. We had several questions come in, and I know that they've been answered in text in the Q&A box. But John, if you want to comment, there were some questions about in the light study, and particularly temperature under the different light scenarios, consistencies in DLI, and so forth. If you could elaborate on that for those listening, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so I covered that pretty quick, the light study, and didn't go into a lot of detail. So one of the things that we did was we made sure that the LED and the HPS, while there are different wavelengths of photosynthetically active radiation, we wanted to make sure that they were providing the same DLI, or daily light interval. And so that was the same intensity. The HPS lights do give off more temperature, and so we were getting back to, we were looking at trying to achieve, what was it, and refresh my mind, Taylor or Kylie, I think we wanted 30 moles of light per day under the light treatments. We wanted to get to, so we're shooting from the lights 30 moles of light additional and under 95% shade. So that was,
we move it up or down
goal
to get that.
What's that?
We'd move up, we set it up so that we would make sure we got that 30 moles per day.
Yeah, so the lights on the intensity, and it was the time, it was based off of the photo period that those lights were on, as well as how close they were to the surface to get to that 30 moles of light per day. HPS lights do give off more temperature, which is one of the benefits of them in northern climates. For instance, like the Green Bay Packers, you can see that they use it, and when the days are short, when they need that extra light, but they also want that extra temperature. Now, Jonathan's on here in Singapore, and I know he's got, they don't need that extra temperature in Singapore, so they wouldn't want that from the HPS lights. But our temperature was never a factor for growth because it was done during June, July, and August when temperature optimums were good under the control plot as well. And we tried to keep a fan to keep some air circulating below to kind of buffer some of that temperature so it wouldn't be as much of a factor in our study. Long answer.
Oh, great. Thanks for sharing. For those that are interested in GCSAA continuing education credits from today's webinar, you can see on the screen here, the event approval code is listed. So be sure to mark that down if you submit that to GCSAA. If you are watching this as an archived video on YouTube, GCSAA has asked that you list the original event date. So today's date of June 2nd, 2020, when you submit your request for credits for watching today's webinar archived. Again, pesticide credits are only available for live viewings, and those will be submitted later on this week. I think that about covers anything. Any last words from the group before we sign off?
No, I think I appreciate everybody. And I got one last question in there, but it was just a comment on the HPS lights being too much in Singapore. But yeah, when you get above 40 degrees Celsius or 100 and some degrees or well above 40, that's even just more temperature than the warm season grasses need for sure. But yeah, no, it's good. Appreciate Chad for sponsoring, and then, the other people for participating. And, Chad, we couldn't do a lot of this work, and the proposed studies coming up from my grad students, Tyler, and where he's doing his work and where Matt's doing his work on the soccer ball stuff is stuff that you supported and built for us. You came in and built those plots for us, and I really appreciate that very much.
Thanks again, Chad, for your support of today's webinar and making this available free for attendees. Appreciate everyone staying with us and listening. Our next webinar in the Tennessee Turf Tuesday series is going to be on July 7th. It's our feature presenter is going to be Dr. Samples, and he's going to have on some special guests with him, Tom Nielsen and Eric Taylor, to talk about Blue Muta and everything that goes along with Blue Muta, not only from the agronomic side, the pest management side as well. So make sure to mark your calendars for that. You will register for that the same way that you registered for this seminar. All of the pesticide credit and certification things should be the same. So be sure to join us again on July 7th and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for listening.